The air was heavy with smoke and fear. From the shattered windows of the last human command center, James Carter watched the burning city below. Explosions lit up the night, turning the skyline into a jagged silhouette. He could hear the distant cries of people and the cold, mechanical sounds of the Giron war machines as they marched through the streets. James, once a young and hopeful officer, was now the most senior commander left on Earth. His uniform was torn, his face lined with exhaustion. The war had lasted 3 long years, and it seemed to have no end, until now. Suddenly, the giant view screen in the command center flickered to life. The blue face of a Giron messenger appeared, eyes shining like polished stones. The alien spoke with a calm voice, but every word was like a command. Commander James Carter, the Queen of the Giron Empire requests your presence aboard her flagship. Come unarmed. This is not a request. The room went silent. His officers exchanged worried glances. No human had ever met the Giron Queen, and those who had faced her armies rarely lived to tell the tale. James took a deep breath, nodded, and stood up straighter. Prepare a shuttle, he ordered, keeping his voice steady. Inside, he was terrified, but he would not show it. Minutes later, James walked alone across the ruined tarmac, his boots crunching on broken glass. A silver Giron shuttle waited for him, guarded by tall, armored aliens. Their armor gleamed in the smoky light, but they did not threaten him. Instead, they bowed slightly, a sign of respect, or perhaps warning. The shuttle's interior was strange and silent. Soft blue lights glowed from the walls, and the seats molded themselves around James as he sat. He looked out the window, watching Earth grow smaller as they rose above the atmosphere. For the first time in months, he saw the planet whole, wounded but still beautiful. The Giron flagship hovered above the clouds, larger than any building on Earth. Its hull shimmered with unknown technology. As the shuttle docked, James's heart pounded. He wondered if this would be his last day as a free man, or his last day at all. A group of Giron guards met him at the hatch. They guided him through twisting halls that seemed to change color with every step. He tried to memorize the path, but quickly became lost. Finally, a great door slid open, revealing a vast chamber filled with soft light and swirling colors. At the far end, on a raised throne, sat Queen Lyritha herself. She was taller than any human woman James had seen, her features both beautiful and alien. She watched him approach, her golden eyes unblinking, her expression unreadable. James stopped before her, trying to look brave. The war had brought him here, but what would happen next? He could not guess. James stood in the center of the glowing chamber, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of alien machinery. Giron guards lined the walls, their faces hidden behind silver helmets. Their eyes followed his every move. At the far end, Queen Lyritha sat on her throne, high above the chamber floor. She looked down at James, her golden eyes sharp and curious. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence grew heavy. Finally, the queen raised her hand, and everyone in the room bowed except James. He waited, unsure what to do. Lyritha's voice echoed across the chamber, her words clear, her accent strange but beautiful. You are James Carter, leader of Earth's remaining forces. James nodded, trying to sound confident. Yes, I am. She stood and walked down the steps, her long robe trailing behind her. Up close, James could see she was younger than he expected. Her skin was a shade of blue, and she wore a crown that shimmered with light. There was something powerful about her, but also something lonely. I do not enjoy war, Lyritha said, stopping just in front of him. My people are tired. Your people are tired. But peace comes at a cost. James listened carefully, wondering if she would demand Earth's surrender or offer mercy. Instead, she surprised him. I have studied your culture, she said, looking straight into his eyes. I have learned of your ways. My advisors tell me there is one solution that can end this war forever. A union between our two worlds. James blinked, not understanding at first. A union. Lyratha nodded. A marriage. You and I, together. Our marriage will join Jiren and human. There will be no more battles, no more death. Instead, we will build a future, together. For a second, James thought he must have heard wrong. Marry the alien queen? It was impossible. Back on Earth, people had always joked about making peace with a handshake. But this was no handshake. This was a proposal that could change history. The Queen's advisors murmured in the background. Some looked pleased. Others looked worried. James could feel all their eyes on him, waiting for his answer. He tried to speak, but his words caught in his throat. He had prepared for threats and demands, not this. He glanced at the Queen and saw something real in her gaze, a mix of hope, pride, and maybe even fear. What happens if I say no? James finally asked, his voice quiet. The Queen's expression turned cold for a moment. Then the war continues, and neither side will survive for long. James stood frozen, the fate of two worlds resting on his answer. The Queen waited, unblinking, as the future hung in the air between them. The news of Queen Lyratha's proposal spread quickly, first through the Jiren flagship, and then down to the battered cities of Earth. For a moment, the fighting stopped. Soldiers from both sides listened to the message sent across the airwaves. Peace was possible, but only if James Carter agreed to marry the alien queen. In the human command center, screens flashed with urgent messages. Leaders from every nation joined a video call, faces tired but hopeful. Some believed the Queen's offer was a chance for survival, a miracle after years of war. Others were suspicious. Could they really trust the Jiren? James sat at a table in a small private room on the flagship. Two of the Queen's advisors stood guard at the door, speaking quietly in their own language. He could not understand them, but he guessed they were arguing about him. A screen blinked to life in front of him. On the other end was General Evans, his oldest friend and the last high-ranking officer on Earth. The general's voice was heavy with worry. "James, what are you going to do?" Evans asked. James sighed. "I don't know. She says if I refuse, the war goes on. If I accept, maybe it ends. But marry an alien queen? It's not as simple as saying yes or no." Evans nodded. "It's your decision, but the world is watching. People are scared, but they're hoping for peace. If there's even a small chance this can work, maybe you should try." As the call ended, James thought about his family. His mother had lost her home in the first attack. His brother was missing in the war. He knew that if he could end the fighting, he might save thousands of lives. But he also worried about what he might be giving up, and what traps might be hidden in the Queen's proposal. Later, the Queen's advisors came to see him. One was tall and quiet, the other shorter and always frowning. The shorter advisor spoke in careful English. "The Queen waits for your answer. She wishes you to understand. This is not a trick. She wants a real alliance, and for both our people to survive. If you refuse, we must prepare for more war." James looked at them, searching their faces for any sign of dishonesty. But all he saw was worry and impatience. He spent the night in a small, soft bed, staring at the ceiling. He remembered the Queen's eyes, strong, but also sad. He remembered the destruction on Earth, and the hope in his general's voice. By morning, James knew the world needed hope more than pride. He stood up, straightened his uniform, and told the guards, "Take me to the Queen. I will give her my answer." James followed the Jiren guards down the bright halls of the flagship. Every step echoed in the silence. He tried to keep his back straight, but inside he felt unsure. He was about to give his answer to the alien queen, and the fate of two worlds depended on him. When the huge doors of the throne room slid open, Queen Lyratha was waiting for him. Sunlight from a hidden window made her silver robe shine. This time, her advisors stood close by, watching James with careful eyes. James bowed slightly, showing respect. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice calm but his hand shaking, "I have thought about your proposal. I still do not understand all your reasons, but I want to save my people. If marriage is the only way to end the war, then I will do it." The Queen's face softened, almost smiling. "You are brave, James Carter. I thank you." One advisor nodded with relief, but the other looked worried. James noticed this but said nothing. He still felt like a stranger in a dangerous place. Queen Lyritha stepped closer. "You must know, this is not a trick or a trap. I am tired of war. My people have lost much, just as yours have. Our marriage will show the galaxy that Jiren and humans can work together." James wanted to believe her, but doubt still filled his mind. "Why me?" he asked. "Why not choose a leader from your own people, or someone else from Earth?" The Queen looked thoughtful. "I have studied you. You fight hard, but you care about life. My advisors say you are honest and will not betray your people. Trust is rare in these times. I believe you will keep your word, and I will keep mine." James looked into her golden eyes and saw no hatred, only exhaustion and hope. It made him feel a little less afraid. Preparations for the marriage began quickly. Alien servants rushed around the ship, decorating halls with bright cloth and strange flowers. Human leaders on Earth sent messages of support and advice. James's mother, who had not seen him in months, sent a short message. "Be brave, son. If anyone can do this, you can." Each day, James learned more about Jiren customs. He wore new clothes that felt odd and heavy. He ate meals with strange colors and flavors. Sometimes, he and Queen Lyritha met alone to talk about their worlds. These talks were quiet, and sometimes awkward, but slowly they began to understand each other. Yet not everyone was happy. Some Jiren generals whispered that a human should never sit beside the Queen. Some humans sent angry messages, calling James a traitor. But James tried to ignore the hate. He focused on peace. Deep inside, he still wondered, could this marriage truly end the war? Or was he stepping into something even more dangerous than the battlefield? James found himself in a world very different from his own. Every morning began with Jiren traditions. Servants painted bright patterns on his hands, telling him this was for good luck before marriage. He smiled and tried to hide his discomfort, not wanting to offend anyone, but the paint smelled strange and itched. Queen Lyritha tried to make things easier for him. She explained customs patiently and asked about human ways. Sometimes they both laughed when the other made a mistake, like when James tried to eat soup with a Jiren fork, which was shaped like a spiral. The soup splashed everywhere, and even the serious guards had to look away to hide their smiles. As the wedding day grew closer, James was introduced to more Jiren traditions. One day, he was led to a grand hall filled with music and color. Dozens of Jiren nobles danced in slow, graceful circles. The Queen took his hand and led him into the dance. At first, he stepped on her toes by mistake, but Lyritha only laughed softly. "In our culture, mistakes in the dance mean good fortune for the couple," she teased. James wondered if that was true, or if she just wanted him to feel less embarrassed. Either way, he was grateful. These small moments made the strangeness of his new life a little easier. But not everyone was happy with the marriage. Some Jiren nobles stared at James with cold eyes, whispering in their own language. He could sense their anger and pride. A few times, he overheard words like outsider and dangerous. Even among his own people, messages arrived from Earth. Some were supportive, but others called him a traitor for agreeing to the marriage. Still, James pushed on. He attended lesson after lesson about Jiren history and laws. Every day, there was something new to learn. Special greetings, rules for meals, and even how to bow properly to Jiren elders. He tried his best, but sometimes he made mistakes. Once, he accidentally used the wrong hand for a greeting, and an elderly noble nearly fainted in shock. The Queen quickly smoothed over the problem, but James could not help feeling out of place. Through all of this, James and Lyritha grew closer. In the quiet evenings, they talked about their families, their favorite foods, and the hopes they had for their people. Slowly, James began to see the Queen not just as a ruler, but as a real person with fears and dreams, just like him. But shadows moved in the background. Some Jiran generals met in secret, unhappy with the Union. On Earth, a few human leaders whispered of rebellion. As the wedding approached, James realized that bringing peace to two worlds was not just about love or understanding. It was about facing enemies on both sides and hoping that trust could win where weapons had failed. As the wedding day grew closer, a strange feeling of danger filled the grand halls of the Jiran flagship. Everything looked beautiful on the surface. Colorful decorations, laughter, and the sounds of music. But James noticed things that others missed. Some guards looked more nervous than usual, and the Queen's main advisor, the one with sharp eyes, kept whispering to her in private. One evening, James sat alone in his new quarters, looking at the city lights outside the window. Suddenly, a quiet knock came at the door. When he opened it, he found a young Jiran servant, eyes wide with fear. "Sir," the servant whispered, "please be careful. Not everyone wants peace. Some want the war to continue, even if it means hurting you or the Queen." James listened closely. He had known there would be enemies, but hearing it from someone inside the ship made it real. He thanked the servant and promised to be careful. That night, James could not sleep. He thought about the risks, not just to himself, but to Queen Lyritha. If the wedding failed, the war would return. He decided he needed to warn the Queen. Early the next morning, he went to her private chamber. Lyritha looked tired, with dark circles under her golden eyes. James told her everything the servant had said. The Queen nodded slowly, as if she had expected it. "I know there are those who hate this marriage," she said softly. "Some of my generals want power, not peace. They believe joining with humans will make us weak." James looked at her seriously. "What can we do? If someone tries to stop the wedding, it could start another war." Lyritha stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "We must show everyone that our union is strong. If we give in to fear, our enemies win. But we must also be careful. I will ask my most loyal guards to watch over us." Over the next days, James and Lyritha quietly searched for clues. They noticed certain generals speaking together in secret. A few servants disappeared without a word. James watched everyone carefully, remembering his training as a soldier. Late one night, James caught a figure sneaking near the room where wedding gifts were stored. He followed and discovered a hidden device, a strange alien tool that could cause a powerful explosion. With help from the Queen's guards, he removed it just in time. Lyritha was shaken but proud. "You saved many lives," she said, "and you prove you care for my people, not just your own." Their teamwork brought them closer. News spread quietly through the ship that the human groom and the alien Queen had stopped a disaster together. Some doubters began to hope, even just a little, that this union might truly bring peace. But in the shadows, those who hated the alliance made new plans. The greatest test was still to come. After stopping the secret plot, James and Queen Lyritha became closer than before. People in both the human and Jiran camps started to believe that real peace might be possible. But trust was still weak. Every step they took was watched, and every word was judged. The wedding day was only a few sunrises away. The flagship was filled with visitors from both worlds. Human scientists and soldiers mixed with Jiran leaders in the halls. Some tried to smile and talk, but old fears were not easy to forget. James and Lyritha met often to talk about the future. They discussed new rules to protect both peoples, shared food from their home planets, and even tried learning each other's languages. Sometimes their talks were serious. Sometimes they shared quiet jokes. Slowly, trust began to grow. One evening, they stood on a balcony above the glowing city lights. James looked at the stars, feeling small and unsure. "I never thought I'd marry an alien queen," he said with a tired smile. Lyrathe laughed softly, her voice gentle. I never thought I would choose a human to share my throne, but life is full of surprises. They spoke about their families. James told stories of his childhood, his mother's cooking, his little brother's laughter. Lyrathe shared stories of her world, where children learned to swim before they could walk, and how she had always wanted to explore the stars. These talks changed something inside both of them. They began to see each other not as enemies, but as people with dreams, worries, and hopes. But outside, dangers still lurked. One day, a message arrived from Earth. Some human leaders were still afraid. They worried that James was only a puppet, or that he might betray them. They'd wanted proof that the Queen would keep her promises. At the same time, some Jiran generals demanded that Lyrathe test James's loyalty. They wanted him to make a public speech, promising that humans would follow Jiran law. The Queen refused. We are building a new world together, she said, not one ruled by fear. Tensions rose. Rumors of more plots spread through the ship. Guards doubled at every doorway. Despite their growing trust, James and Lyrathe wondered if their own people would ever accept their union. One night, Lyrathe found James alone in the garden room, staring at a small blue flower. Are you afraid? She asked. James nodded. Yes, but I want to try. I believe we can do something good. She took his hand, and for the first time, neither of them pulled away. As the wedding day drew near, trust between them grew stronger. But outside their circle, the world held its breath, waiting to see if hope would finally win, or if old fears would tear them apart. The day of the wedding arrived. All across the Jiran flagship, bright banners and glowing lanterns decorated the halls. People from Earth and Jiran both watched the event on screens, some with hope, some with worry. The air was filled with excitement and tension. James dressed in formal clothes made for the occasion. His jacket sparkled with Jiran stones, and a silver sash showed his new status. He felt strange in these clothes, but also proud. He thought of his family on Earth, hoping they would be safe after this day. Queen Lyrathe wore a long dress that shimmered in every color of the stars. Her crown shined brightly, and her golden eyes were calm but serious. She stood tall, looking every bit a queen, but her smile for James was warm. The grand hall was filled with important guests, human leaders, Jiran nobles, and even some children. As the ceremony began, music filled the air, a mix of both worlds' traditions. James walked to the front, his heart beating fast. The Queen joined him at the center. A Jiran priest spoke in a deep, musical voice, telling the story of two worlds at war and the hope for peace. James listened, feeling the weight of every word. Just as they prepared to exchange vows, a sudden crash echoed through the hall. Smoke filled the back of the room, and a group of masked attackers rushed in, shouting in Jiran and English. People screamed and ran for cover. The peace everyone hoped for was in danger. James moved quickly, protecting the Queen as the guards fought back. The attackers tried to reach Lyrathe, but James stood in their way. He remembered his training, using quick moves to block and disarm them. Lyrathe also fought bravely, using her royal staff to knock down one attacker. Together, James and the Queen faced the threat. The crowd watched as the couple worked side by side, stronger together than apart. Guards arrived and arrested the attackers. Slowly, the smoke cleared, and calm returned. James checked the Queen. Are you hurt? Lyrathe shook her head. No, thanks to you. The priest stepped forward, his voice steady. Even in the face of danger, these two stood together. That is the true spirit of peace. The ceremony continued. James and Lyrathe spoke their vows. They promised to work together for the good of both their peoples, no matter what danger came. When the priest declared them joined, the hall filled with cheers and applause. Around the galaxy, people watched in awe. For the first time in years, hope was stronger than fear. The marriage was more than just a ceremony. It was a promise that even the deepest wounds could heal if enemies dared to trust each other. After the dramatic wedding, the news spread quickly to every corner of Earth and the Jiren worlds. For many, it was hard to believe that the war was truly over. Some people celebrated in the streets, dancing and singing. Others watched the news with quiet hope, afraid to trust that peace would last. James and Queen Lyrithe now stood together, not just as a couple but as leaders of a new alliance. The days after the wedding were busy and full of challenges. They signed the official peace treaty, watched by cameras and leaders from many planets. Their hands, joined over the agreement, became a symbol of a new future. But making peace on paper was only the beginning. James and Lyrithe had to work hard to help their peoples accept the change. Many humans still did not trust the Jiren, and some Jiren nobles grumbled about a human sitting beside their queen. To bring people together, the new rulers started sharing their cultures. They organized great feasts where humans tasted Jiren dishes for the first time and learned new dances. Jiren children visited Earth's schools over special video calls, asking questions and laughing with human kids. Slowly, walls of fear and hate began to crack. James missed home, but he felt proud when he saw children from both worlds playing together in the flagship's garden. Even the adults, at first cold and distant, started to greet each other with shy smiles. There were still some who wanted the old ways back. A few angry speeches rang out on Earth's news, and some Jiren generals argued behind closed doors. But each time a problem appeared, James and Lyrithe faced it together. They listened, answered questions, and promised to protect both peoples. James found his days full, meeting with leaders, talking with citizens, and learning more about his new world. At night, he and Lyrithe would walk through quiet halls, sharing their worries and dreams. "I never thought peace could be so much work," James joked one night, and the queen laughed. "But it is worth it," she replied. "Every small step is a victory." Over time, stories of the wedding and the new alliance spread to other planets. Some alien leaders reached out, curious about the partnership between human and Jiren. For the first time in many years, the galaxy talked about hope instead of war. James sometimes felt the weight of his choices, but whenever he saw Lyrithe smiling or children from both worlds playing together, he knew they were on the right path. There would be more challenges ahead, but together, they could face anything. And so, a new era began, not with weapons or fear, but with the courage to trust, the strength to forgive, and the hope to build something better, side by side. Months passed since the wedding of James and Queen Lyrithe. The wounds of war did not heal overnight, but every day brought small changes. Where once there was only fear and hate, new friendships began to grow. People from Earth and the Jiren world started to visit each other's cities, bringing gifts, stories, and songs. The new alliance needed leaders who were patient and brave. James and Lyrithe worked side by side. They listened to those who were afraid and helped them find ways to feel safe. They made new laws that protected both humans and Jiren. Every week, they traveled together, sometimes to Jiren space stations, sometimes to human towns still rebuilding from war. One morning, James stood with Lyrithe on a balcony high above a busy city. Below them, a market was alive with colors and noise. Human children played with Jiren children, chasing bright kites. Old enemies now worked together, building new homes and planting gardens where bombs once fell. James smiled. "Do you ever miss the old days?" he asked the queen. Lyrithe thought for a moment, her golden eyes shining. "Sometimes I miss my childhood, but I do not miss the war. I do not miss being alone." James nodded. He remembered lonely nights during the war, missing his family, wondering if peace was just a dream. Now, with Lyrithe by his side, he felt hope for the first time in years. Of course, there were still problems. Some people on both sides found it hard to forgive. Sometimes, arguments grew heated in council meetings. A few old generals still wished for power. But each time, James and Lirithe stood together, refusing to let anger win. Together, they started new programs, schools where human and Jiren children learned side by side, farms where both peoples worked together, and festivals that celebrated both cultures. News of their partnership spread across the galaxy, and other worlds began to send messages, asking how to find peace in their own lands. James never imagined his life would change so much. He had come from a small city on Earth, a simple soldier. Now he was part of a story told to children as proof that hope can win, even when the world seems lost. One evening, as the stars came out, James and Lirithe walked in the palace garden. Flowers from both their planets bloomed together, their colors mixing in the soft light. The queen took James's hand. "We have given our people a new beginning," she said quietly. James smiled. "And as long as we face the future together, I think anything is possible." Under the same stars that once watched over war, Earth, and Jiren began a new chapter, one written with trust, courage, and hope for a brighter tomorrow.